Out of touch is a Liberal NDP government that listens to bankers and bondholders that benefit from Liberal inflation. I'm listening to my constituents like Lisa, who showed me her carbon tax rebate. It was $15. What a joke. It's not a joke for Foothills families who pay $3,000 a year in carbon taxes, have nothing left for food or homes, let alone a summer vacation. The Parliamentary Budget Officer is clear. Canadians pay more in the carbon tax than they get back in a rebate. Will the Prime Minister axe all federal gas tax this summer so Lisa could take her family for a summer road trip?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are the party of austerity.
That's right.
The only thing they know how to do is cut, cut, cut. And so it is no surprise that they want to cut the carbon rebates that leave 8 out of 10 Canadian families better off. And you know what else they want to cut? They want to cut the National School Food Program. They want to cut early learning and child care.
Yep.
They want to cut dental care that already 2 million Canadians are benefiting from.
Right.
They want to tear Canada down, but we won't let them.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the hunger and homelessness. Alan and Willa, seniors from Melbourne who've worked their whole lives, have told me that they can't even afford a small vacation because everything is too expensive. Conservatives are calling on the government to axe the tax this summer, saving Ontario families nearly $600 to help pay for food and housing and maybe a small family vacation. So will the Prime Minister adopt our common sense plan to axe the tax on gas this summer so Canadians can afford a summer road trip?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've said a number of times in this House, it would be useful if the Conservative Party of Canada actually used facts to inform the questions that they ask. 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back. 300 Canadian economists have said so. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said so. It actually works in reverse to income, so it's people who actually live on the most modest income that get the most money back, and it's part of fixing the climate crisis that threatens the future of our children. The group across the way has no plan for affordability, and their plan for climate is to simply let the planet burn.
The Honourable Member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
What we just heard, that answer from the NDP Liberal government, is that they want Canadians like Alan and Willa to be poor and miserable. Canadians deserve a break. They work hard, they pay their taxes, and how does this government repay them? They increase the carbon tax by 23%. So I'll ask the question again. Will the Prime Minister adopt our common sense plan to axe the tax on gas this summer so Canadians can afford a summer vacation?
During the honourable member's question, there was a lot of discussion going on, nothing too radical. I'd ask members please to keep their voices down so that we could all hear the questions and hear the answer. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, even Conservative premiers understand the absolute carnage that Conservative cuts would cause across our country. They understand that the only thing Conservatives want to do is cut the support Canadians urgently need. They want to cut the National School Food Program. 400,000 kids are going to benefit from that. They want to cut dental care. 2 million Canadians already benefiting from it. And of course, they want to cut early learning and childcare. We won't let them do any of that.
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Flight attendants, who are predominantly women, work on average 35 hours a month unpaid. No worker should have to do their job without a paycheck. But the Liberals and the Conservatives have let the big airline CEOs get away with it. The Liberals have even given these airlines millions in handouts. And recently, the Liberals told flight attendants that they should simply file complaints with those same CEOs who are ripping them off. Why are the Liberals putting the burden on workers instead of holding profitable CEOs to account?
You're here.
The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Members are aware Canadian Airlines are private sector companies. The government does not regulate wages in companies aside from setting a minimum wage. Employers must pay their workers no less than the minimum wage for all hours of work performed, which is protected under the Canada Labour Code. This is an issue we take very seriously, and we are monitoring it closely. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, people with disabilities are still waiting for this government to protect their dignity and their safety when they travel with Canadian Airlines. We've heard story after story about people being injured, mobility aids being broken or lost. And the Liberals' response? They held a summit where there was yet again more talk and very little action. The only announcement from the summit was the airlines earnestly promising to do better in the future. The minister can do more than simply ask politely. He can lay down the law and set proper rules. Why does he refuse to?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government is firm in supporting persons with disabilities, be they traveling from point A to point B, by air, by land, by sea, by all means of transport. And that's why we held a disability summit, gathering together the airlines industry and persons with disabilities to sharpen our pencils to make sure that persons with disabilities can travel with dignity. We are doing this work. We're making sure that Canadians can travel in a dignified fashion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good answer.
The Honourable Member from Halifax West.
An abundance of talent in Atlantic Canada's colleges and universities. The cutting-edge research and innovation produced in my region strengthens Canada's competitive advantage and drives growth in key industries like manufacturing, clean energy, and ocean sustainability. Can the minister responsible for ACOA tell the House what our government is doing to support researchers and entrepreneurs fueling East Coast innovation?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Regional Economic Development in ACOA.
Mr. Speaker, Atlantic Canada is just full of bright thinkers and doers. And at ACOA, the past few years, we've invested $30 million in Springboard Atlantic to get ideas from the classroom to the boardroom. Springboard has turned that funding into $500 million in partnerships. We know ACOA investments bring long-term benefits to our communities. And yet, the member from New Brunswick Southwest wrote in the National Post that ACOA and the other regional economic development agencies should be shut down. I wonder, do the other 7 Atlantic Conservatives agree with them? Will they stand up for our region and support the work of ACOA? Let's hope they have a backbone. We do, Mr. Speaker.
You have no backbone.
The Honourable Member from Cumberland Colchester.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the hunger or the homelessness. The pain of their financial mismanagement is coming home to roost in my hometown, where they came to visit. But what they didn't know is the Colchester Food Bank is serving 148 more households than they did the year before. These are real people, not statistics, and they deserve better. I asked this question on Friday, didn't really get much of an answer, but maybe I'll get one today. When will the Prime Minister axe the tax so Canadians can afford to eat again?
The Honourable Member for Families.
Mr. Speaker, we all suffer when we see fellow Canadians suffering, which is why we set concrete poverty reduction targets, a target to reduce poverty by 50% by 2030. There are 1.3 million fewer Canadians living in poverty today than there were when the Conservatives were in government, and this includes hundreds of thousands of children. That said, more work needs to be done, which is exactly why Budget 2024 brings forward additional measures to strengthen our social security net.
The Honourable Member from Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, the member the opposite is avoiding the question, and the answer shows us just how much we need a significant change in government. The CBC reported last week that seniors in Louisbourg, Nova Scotia, have been going days and even weeks without a proper meal, and that some children are not attending school because they don't have any food to take for lunch. Canadians are hurting, and their government just doesn't seem to care. Again, when will the Prime Minister axe the tax so Canadians can afford to feed themselves?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it is the height of hypocrisy for Conservatives
Nails on
to
a
claim
chalkboard.
that they care about the most vulnerable among us.
That's right.
Let's talk about seniors, Mr. Speaker. 900,000 seniors across the country are benefiting from the GIS put in place by our government. And children in school, I agree that it is a tragedy for a kid to go to school hungry, and that's why our national school food program will provide meals for an additional 400,000 children. They are opposed to both. We take no lessons from them when it comes to food.
The honourable member from Chatham-Kent, Leamington.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the hunger and or homelessness. Food Banks Canada gives Canada failing grades as nearly half of Canadians are financially feeling the cost of living increases. Housing costs have doubled. 1 in 4 experience food insecurity. Food bank usage is up 11% in Windsor-Essex. 61% of Canadians are using food banks, and they're the first-time users. Mr. Speaker, we believe in bringing it home. The tragedy of this government is that there are people who can't afford a home, let alone food to put into it. Is this the sunny ways that this Prime Minister promised Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, of course, we know, Mr. Speaker, that when the Conservatives had the opportunity to be in government, they focused no attention on those that were homeless or vulnerable. We have not only met our targets every year to reduce poverty, but have taken important action. What the Conservatives essentially are saying is, in tough global times, we're here for you to cut your dental care. We're here for you to cut your diabetes medication. We're here for you to cut your child care. We're here for you to cut the supports that you need in difficult economic times. Canadians will see through that. They know who has their back.
The honourable member from Moose Jaw Lake Centre, Lanigan.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the hunger or the homelessness. Nearly half of Canadians are paying more than a third of their paycheck on food. The Moose Jaw Food Bank helped nearly 8,000 households in 2023,
Minister of Gender
up
and
58%.
Inclusion and,
It's time to give Canadians back their dignity. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister axe the tax, or will it take a common-sense Conservative government before Canadians can afford to eat?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives when it comes to supporting the most vulnerable among us. Since we formed government, 1.3 million Canadians have been lifted out of poverty, including hundreds of thousands of children. But we recognize these are very challenging times in Canada and around the world. And that is why we are so glad to be putting in place a national school food program. 400,000 kids will get meals because of it. How can the Conservatives vote against that? You know how? Because they only believe in cuts and austerity.
That's right.